Winter doesn't warn you when it decides to take something away. It just arrives and waits. That night in the middle of a snowstorm, a golden retriever mother didn't run. She lay down in the cold and wrapped her body around 4 newborn puppies, knowing it might be the last thing she ever did. No cries, no hope of rescue, just a mother choosing love over survival. Then one man noticed the tracks in the snow and stopped. If stories like this speak to you, consider staying with us. And if you believe moments like this still matter, you're welcome to subscribe. Snow moved sideways across the Montana Valley, driven low by wind erasing sound and distance alike, until the world felt reduced to breath cold, and whatever remained standing inside it. Jack Miller stepped out onto his porch with his collar-pulled high boots already stiff from the day's freeze. At 46, he had learned to read winter the way others read faces. The weight of the air, the pitch of the wind, the way silence thickened just before something went wrong. He told himself he was only checking the generator, nothing more, the same small ritual he followed every evening when the temperature dropped without warning. Jack was a tall man, but not imposing. Years of working outdoors had narrowed him rather than built him, leaving long arms and a frame that looked better suited to endurance than force. His beard, full and uneven, held traces of gray that caught frost easily. His face carried sharp angles, softened by fatigue creases at the corners of his eyes, from squinting into snow, glare, a mouth that rarely smiled, but also never hardened completely. People in town described him as polite, reserved, dependable. None of them would have called him lonely, though loneliness lived in him the way cold lived in the ground, quiet, constant, unseen, unless you paid attention. He had just turned back toward the door when something broke the pattern of white. Not movement, absence. A stretch of snow near the road lay uneven, pressed down where it should have drifted smooth. Jack paused, the wind tugging at his coat. Headlights had passed earlier. He remembered the sound, but that wasn't unusual. What caught him was the shape of the marks. They weren't old. The edges were sharp, not yet softened by wind or falling flakes. He walked closer, each step deliberate. Tire tracks, deep, abrupt, as if the vehicle had stopped suddenly rather than eased to a halt. Jack crouched, gloved hand hovering over the impression. The cold bit through leather. Snow packed hard beneath his fingers. Beside the tracks were footprints. Human. One heavier than the other, heels digging in toes, sliding forward. Someone in a hurry. Or someone struggling. Jack straightened slowly, eyes scanning the tree line, the road, the wide, blank stretch of snow beyond. His pulse picked up, though he couldn't have said why. Instinct, maybe. Or memory. He followed the tracks toward the ditch without fully deciding to. The wind grew louder. There funneled low along the road, lifting fine powder into his eyes. At first, all he saw was white piled against white. Then shape emerged. Color. Gold dulled to bone pale under frost. A dog. She lay curled, unnaturally tight body, arched into a protective crescent. Her fur was crusted with ice along the spine, the longer hairs stiff and brittle. Jack took another step and stopped himself, suddenly aware of how loud his breathing sounded in the stillness. Beneath her chest were 4 smaller shapes. Puppies. They were so close together they appeared almost fused, a single dark knot pressed into the shallow hollow of her body. Their coats were short, darker than hers, damp where snow had melted and refrozen. One tiny paw twitched. Another was still. Jack did not move. He had seen animals die in winter before, plenty of them. The woods did not allow sentiment. But this was different. The mother's ribs expanded shallow but steady. Her head rested low, muzzle half buried in snow, eyes closed, or nearly so. For a moment, Jack thought he might be too late anyway, that this was only the last echo of life, not life itself. The thought settled heavily in his chest, familiar and unwelcome. Then the mother dog opened one eye. It was dark glassy, with exhaustion, but aware. It fixed on him without lifting her head. No growl came, no bark, only a tightening through her body, a subtle shift as she pulled the puppies closer with what strength she had left. Jack swallowed. He wanted to step forward, wanted to kneel, to reach out, to do something, anything that would quiet the surge of helplessness rising in him. But his feet stayed planted, because something else had caught his attention. Beyond the ditch near where the tire tracks had ended, the snow was disturbed again. Not paw prints, not human footprints, fresh scuff marks, a place where boots had turned, where weight had shifted recently, too recently. Jack turned slowly, scanning the road again. Snow continued to fall, but not enough to hide everything. The tracks were still there, sharp, undeniable. Someone had been here, not hours ago, not yesterday, recently. The realization tightened his shoulders, drawing them up toward his ears. He felt exposed, standing there, silhouetted against his own porch light. The woods beyond the road seemed suddenly closer, darker, as if listening. Jack had learned long ago that not all danger announced itself. Some of it watched. Some of it waited to see what choice you would make before revealing its hand. His breath came slower now, measured. He forced himself to catalog details instead of emotion. The angle of the tire tracks, the depth of the footprints, the way the mother dog's ears lay flattened, not in aggression, but in vigilance. Fear learned the hard way. He wondered how long she had been there. Hours, overnight, longer. The cold had been brutal the past 2 days. Cold enough to kill a healthy animal, let alone newborns. And yet she had not left them. That fact lodged in Jack's chest and refused to move. He thought of other winters, other choices. Times when he had arrived too late, hands empty, words useless. Times when standing still had been the only thing he could do, because moving meant admitting hope. The wind shifted again. Jack felt it then, an awareness prickling along his neck. Not a sound, not a sight, just the unmistakable sense of being observed. He turned sharply toward the road. In the distance, barely visible through the falling snow, a set of headlights flared briefly and then dimmed, as if someone had slowed and reconsidered. Jack's jaw tightened. He looked back down at the dog and her puppies, their bodies pressed together in fragile defiance of the cold. Then he looked again at the road, at the marks in the snow that told a story not yet finished. He stood there, frozen between instinct and caution. The wind howling around him, knowing with sudden certainty that whatever had placed them in that ditch had not gone far. Jack moved before he could talk himself out of it. The wind had teeth now cutting through layers, and the mother dog's breathing had turned shallow enough to scare him. He shed his coat again, wrapping it tighter around the golden retriever and her puppies, then scooped the smallest bodies first, 4 warm, trembling weights pressed together like they shared one heartbeat. The mother stiffened as he reached, muscles locking, but she didn't snap. Her eyes stayed open, tracking every motion with a vigilance sharpened by fear. "I know," Jack said under his breath, more to himself than to her. "I know." He carried them up the short slope to the house in 2 trips, his boots slipping on ice-polished boards. The puppies came first, cradled against his chest, beneath his jacket, their tiny bodies radiating fragile heat. When he returned for the mother, she tried to rise on her own. Her legs failed her folding in on themselves, and a low sound escaped her throat, pain-warning refusal to surrender. Jack slid his arms beneath her chest and hips, careful not to force her spine straight. She allowed the lift breath shuddering her weight lighter than it should have been. Inside the house smelled of wood smoke and old pine. Jack laid the puppies on a folded blanket near the stove, then eased the mother down beside them. She curled, immediately dragging them back under her chest with a desperate insistence that made his throat tighten. Only then did he notice the condition of her paws pads split and bleeding ice packed between toes. 2 days in this cold, maybe more. He fetched water and set it within reach. She ignored it, eyes locked on the pups. Jack washed his hands, shaking as the heat returned to his fingers, then reached for the phone. He hadn't called anyone in Whitefish after dark in a long time. The screen glowed too bright in the dim room. Doctor, Ellen Brooks answered on the 3rd ring. She was in her early 50s, Jack knew, with short silver hair, and the habit of listening without interrupting. In town, people trusted her because she spoke plainly and never pretended certainty when there was none. Ellen Jack said, "I need advice. I found a golden retriever and 4 newborns in a ditch. They're alive. Barely." There was a pause, not hesitation calculation. "Are they warm?" she asked. "I'm working on it." "Good. Don't rush heat. Slow and steady. Towels, blankets, body warmth if you have to. Do not separate the mother from the puppies unless you must." Jack looked at the tight curl of gold fur by the stove. "She won't let me." "That's a good sign," Ellen said. "How long do you think they were out there?" 2 days, at least. Another pause. Then keep them quiet. No baths, no food yet, if she won't take it. Water nearby. Call me back in an hour. When he hung up, the house felt smaller, fuller, as if the walls had leaned in to listen. Jack sat on the floor a few feet away, hands clasped, and waited. The mother dog watched him without blinking. Up close, he could see the burrs tangled in her fur, the faint scar along her shoulder, where hair didn't grow back right. Her ears lay low, not flat alert, without aggression. She was young, he decided, but not naive. The kind of dog who learned quickly because learning had been the difference between pain and survival. One puppy wriggled free and made a thin sound. The mother nudged it back into place with her nose gentler than Jack expected. Her breathing steadied a fraction. Time stretched. The stove popped. Outside, the wind rose again, rattling the eaves. Jack found himself counting breaths, not his own, but theirs. He tried offering water once more. The mother shifted teeth, flashing briefly, not a bite, just a warning drawn in air. Jack withdrew his hand. "Okay," he murmured. "Later." He noticed then how his hands shook when he pulled them back. The tremor annoyed him. He'd been steadier in worse conditions. But this was different. This wasn't a call-out with a plan and a partner and a checklist. This was a choice unfolding in real time, and every minute he stayed in it made leaving less possible. An hour passed. Ellen called back. Jack reported shallow breaths, minimal movement, no feeding yet. "Keep doing what you're doing," she said. "If they're stable by morning, bring them in. If not, call me. Anytime." After he hung up, Jack stood and turned the porch light off, then on again, testing how far its glow reached into the snow. The road lay empty, white, swallowing everything beyond the beam. He returned to the room and sat again. The mother dog's eyes followed him. Slowly, so slowly, it might have been coincidence, she lowered her head to the floor and closed them. Jack exhaled. Later, when the fire had burned down to coals and the house had settled into its nighttime sounds, he heard it tires on snow, the muted crunch of slow movement. Not passing fast, slowing. Jack rose without thinking and went to the window. A vehicle crept along the road, headlights dimmed as if the driver didn't want to be seen. It paused just long enough for him to feel the weight of it, then rolled on. By the time the sound faded, Jack was standing in the dark, heart pounding, aware that the decision he'd made at the ditch had reached him here. Behind him, the mother dog lifted her head. Morning arrived without color. The storm had passed in the night, leaving the world scrubbed raw and silent. Snow lay packed and crusted, reflecting a pale light that made everything feel exposed. Jack woke on the couch, his neck stiff, one boot still on. For a few seconds he didn't remember why he'd slept there. Then he heard it. A small, uneven sound, soft, insistent. Not a cry exactly, more like a complaint whispered into the air. Jack sat up fast. By the stove, the golden retriever mother was awake. She hadn't moved far from where he'd left her, but her posture had changed. Her body still curved around the puppies, yet her head was lifted now, ears angled sharply forward. One puppy squirmed, nosing blindly at her belly. Another kicked weakly, finding nothing, then something, then holding on. Relief loosened Jack's chest a notch. They were feeding. He stayed where he was, careful not to intrude. Dr. Brooks's words echoed in his head, quiet, steady. Don't rush. The mother dog's breathing deepened as the puppies latched on. For a few minutes, the room settled into a fragile peace. Then a truck passed on the road. It wasn't loud, just the distant growl of an engine tires crunching over packed snow. But the effect was immediate. The mother dog jerked as if struck. Her head snapped up, body tensing hard enough to jostle the puppies. A low sound rolled out of her chest. Raw, panicked. She shifted, trying to pull all 4 puppies tighter beneath her paws, scrambling on the floor. It's okay, Jack said, instinctively, rising halfway from the couch. Her eyes found him, wide and wild, pupils blown. She didn't lunge. She didn't growl again. She froze, trembling ears, flattened now, breath coming fast and shallow. The truck faded into the distance. The sound disappeared, but the fear didn't. It took long seconds before the mother dog's body loosened. Even then, she stayed rigid, head lifted, listening for something only she could hear. The puppies, disturbed, whimpered and fumbled until she nudged them back into place with shaking precision. Jack sank back down, heart thudding. That reaction wasn't normal startle. That was memory. Later, when the sun climbed just enough to throw weak light across the porch, Jack stepped outside. The cold bit sharper than the night before, the kind that made your eyes ache. He pulled his collar up and walked the edge of the house, scanning the snow. That was when he saw it. Half buried near the tree line, no more than 20 yards from the back of the house, was a length of rope. Old nylon, frayed and stiff with ice. One end disappeared beneath the snow. The other lay coiled loosely as if dropped in haste. Jack knelt and brushed snow aside with his glove. The rope was stained dark in places, not fresh. Rust brown frozen hard into the fibers. Blood. His stomach tightened. A few feet away, caught on a low branch, was a scrap of blue tarp. Torn. The plastic was brittle with cold edges, cracked and sharp. One corner was weighted down by snow, as though someone had tried and failed to hide it. Jack straightened slowly, the wind cutting through him. Years ago, he would have recognized this scene instantly, back when he still wore a uniform with a patch stitched over the heart. Back when calls came in at all hours, and he answered without hesitation. Animal rescue wasn't always about lost pets and well-meaning owners. Sometimes it was this: rope, tarps, quick decisions made in bad weather by people who believed cold would erase evidence. Jack closed his eyes. He saw flashes of other winters. A barn where dogs were chained too short to lie down. A ditch with trash bags tied too carefully. Faces that looked away when he asked questions. Reports that went nowhere because proof melted or blew away. He had left that work after one case too many ended without consequences. After learning how often cruelty hid behind closed doors and polite smiles, he told himself he was done fighting battles no one wanted won. And yet here he was. He carried the rope and tarp inside, setting them just inside the mudroom where the dogs couldn't see. When he returned to the living space, the mother dog tracked his movement instantly. Her gaze dropped to his hands, then lifted to his face, searching. "You're safe here," he said quietly. The words felt thin even as he spoke them. The puppies slept again, bellies rounder now. Jack noticed their differences for the first time. One larger than the rest, darker gold. One with a white patch on its chest. One that twitched constantly, as if dreaming too hard. One so still, he leaned closer, just to see the rise of its tiny sides. The mother dog watched him watch them. Up close, her condition told a clearer story. Her ribs showed faintly beneath her coat. A healing scrape ran along her flank, poorly scabbed. Her eyes, deep brown, intelligent, held the kind of caution learned through repetition, not chance. She was not a stray. By midday, Jack called Dr. Brooks again and described the reaction to the engine noise. There was silence on the line this time, heavier than before. "That's trauma," Ellen said finally, "not just fear. If you found rope, Jack, you need to assume someone did this on purpose." "I am," he said. Outside, another vehicle passed. This one faster. The mother dog startled again, though less violently, and Jack felt something settle in his chest. Resolve. He looked at the windows, at the door, at the snow beyond his property line unmarred except where it wasn't. Whoever had left her there had not counted on survival. Jack wasn't sure yet what he would do with that knowledge, only that turning away now was no longer an option. The knock came just after noon, not loud, not hesitant either. 3 firm taps that carried through the small house and settled somewhere low in Jack's chest. He was standing at the kitchen sink rinsing a bowl he hadn't really used when the sound reached him. The mother dog heard it too. Her head lifted instantly. Ears angled forward, then flattened. A low rumble rolled out of her throat, quiet controlled nothing like the panic she'd shown at engine noise. This was different. This was warning. Jack dried his hands slowly and moved toward the front window, careful to keep his body between the door and the dogs. He didn't look out right away. He listened first. Boots shifted on the porch. Weight transferred from one foot to the other. Someone patient enough to wait, confident enough not to knock again. When Jack finally pulled the curtain back an inch, he saw a man standing square to the door. Mid-30s, maybe early 40s. Broad shoulders filling a dark canvas jacket worn shiny at the seams. He had a trimmed beard that followed the sharp line of his jaw, too precisely to be neglect, and his hair, dark blonde, almost sandy, was cut short, military neat. His posture was relaxed, hands visible empty, a practiced calm, the kind of man who knew how to appear harmless. Jack opened the door only as far as the chain allowed. Cold rushed in sharp and clean. "Afternoon," the man said. His voice was even friendly. "Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for a dog. Golden retriever. Might have wandered off during the storm." Behind Jack, the mother dog rose. She didn't bark. She didn't lunge. She stepped forward, placing her body squarely between the puppies and the door lips lifting to show teeth worn but strong. The sound she made then was unmistakable, low vibrating, full of intent. The man's eyes flicked past Jack's shoulder. Just a glance. Quick. Calculating. Jack felt it like a hand closing around his spine. "She's not wandering," Jack said. His voice surprised him, steady flat. "And she's not yours." The man lifted his hands a fraction higher, palms open. "Easy. I didn't say she was, just figured I'd ask. Folks around here look out for each other." He smiled then. It didn't reach his eyes. Up close, Jack noticed small details, a faint scar cutting through one eyebrow, knuckles thickened skin, rough the hands of someone used to grip rather than gesture. Not a rancher, not a logger, something else. "You alone out here?" the man asked casually. Jack didn't answer. The mother dog's growl deepened. The puppies shifted behind her, pressed into the corner where blankets met wall. One let out a thin squeak. The man's jaw tightened briefly before he smoothed it away. "Look," he said, "if you've got her, that's fine. I was just helping a friend search. Didn't mean to intrude." "Then don't," Jack said. Silence stretched between them. Snow fell lightly now, dusting the porch rail. The man took a step back, then another. "No harm done," he said. "If you hear anything, though, I won't," Jack cut in. The man studied him for a long second. Then he nodded once, sharp. He turned and walked down the steps, boots crunching loud enough to sound deliberate. He didn't look back. Jack closed the door and slid the bolt home. Only then did he realize how tight his shoulders were drawn, how his pulse hammered against his ribs. He leaned his forehead briefly against the wood, breathing through his nose until the shaking eased. Behind him, the mother dog remained standing, muscles taut, eyes locked on the door, as if she expected it to open again by force. "It's okay," Jack said softly, though he wasn't sure it was true. The rest of the afternoon passed under a thin layer of tension. Jack checked the windows twice, then a third time. He kept the curtains half drawn, the porch light off, despite the gray day. He moved quietly, deliberately, as if the house itself were listening. The mother dog relaxed only when dusk settled in. Even then, she positioned herself so she could see both the door and the puppies at once, her body a living barricade. As night fell, Jack made his decision. He sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug, gone cold, and stared at the phone. Calling the sheriff now would raise questions he wasn't ready to answer. Handing the dogs over to any one rescue shelter stranger felt impossible. Not yet. Whoever that man was, he hadn't come by accident. He hadn't come unprepared. And he wouldn't have left so easily if he didn't believe he had time. Jack looked toward the living room, where the mother dog had finally lain down, one paw draped protectively over the nearest puppy. Her eyes were open, watchful, even in rest. "I won't give you to anyone," Jack said quietly. "Not until I know." Outside, the wind picked up again, carrying with it the distant sound of a vehicle shifting gears somewhere beyond the trees. The storm did not arrive quietly. It tore into the valley just after sunset, wind howling down from the mountains with a force that rattled the walls and turned the trees into dark, bending shapes. Snow came sideways, thick and heavy, piling faster than it could settle. By the time Jack finished reinforcing the front door with the old wooden bar he kept behind the coat rack, the road had vanished completely. The power went out without warning. One moment the single overhead bulb glowed weakly, the next it was gone, plunging the house into darkness, broken only by the orange pulse of the wood stove. The silence that followed felt unnatural, too complete, as if the storm had swallowed the world whole. The mother dog reacted before Jack did. She surged to her feet, body angling instinctively toward the door, then shifted again, placing herself between the puppies and the deepest shadow of the room. Her legs trembled under her weight, exhaustion etched into every line of her frame, but she did not sit. Her ears flattened tight to her skull, teeth just visible as her lips pulled back in a silent warning. Jack moved slowly, deliberately, so as not to startle her. He added another log to the stove, then pulled blankets tighter around the corner where the puppies lay pressed together. They were stronger now, eyes barely open, bodies warm with shared heat, but they sensed the tension. One whimpered softly. "It's okay," Jack whispered, though his chest felt tight, saying it. "Stay close." Hours passed in a strange, stretched silence. The radio spat nothing but static. His phone showed no signal. Outside, the wind screamed like something alive, slamming snow against the windows hard enough to make the glass flex. It was close to midnight when he heard it. An engine. Not distant, not fading, stopping. Jack's body went rigid. He reached for the lantern and killed it, plunging the room into near darkness. Only the stove remained glowing low and red. He crept to the window and wiped a small circle clear with his sleeve. Headlights cut weakly through the storm, angled downward, as if the driver didn't want them seen from afar. The vehicle idled just beyond the porch engine, uneven, fighting the cold. Behind him, the mother dog let out a low growl that vibrated through the floorboards. She stepped forward, placing her body directly in front of the puppies, tail low, shoulders squared. Despite the shaking that ran through her legs, she did not back away. Jack grabbed the flashlight and the iron poker from beside the stove. His hands were steady now. Fear had sharpened into something colder, more precise. Boots crunched outside. Slow, heavy, confident. The knock came hard enough to rattle the door in its frame. "Open up," a man's voice shouted through the storm. "I know you've got the dog." The same voice as before, stripped of politeness, raw with urgency. Jack did not answer. The handle jerked violently. The door shuddered, snow sifting down from the top of the frame. "You can't keep her," the man yelled. "She's not yours. This doesn't have to get ugly." The mother dog barked once sharp, explosive, then lunged forward a step before stopping herself, holding the line. Her breath came fast, fogging the air. One paw slid slightly on the floor, but she recovered, standing firm. Jack stepped up behind her. Poker raised his body, forming a barrier. He could feel her heat, the tremor running through her muscles. She leaned back into him, just enough to know he was there. "Leave," Jack said loud enough to cut through the wind. "The road's closed. You're not coming in." A harsh laugh followed. "You think weather scares me?" The door shook again, harder this time. The wooden bar groaned. Jack's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. If the door gave, there would be no second chance. The flashlight beam slashed across the window, wild and uneven, then disappeared. Something heavy struck the door once more, then stopped. Silence. Jack held his position muscles burning, every sense stretched thin. The storm roared on, but beneath it he listened for footsteps, for breath, for movement. Then the engine revved. Through the window, Jack caught a glimpse of the headlights swinging wide as the vehicle struggled to turn in the deep snow. Tires spun uselessly, throwing powder into the air before finally catching. The engine howled as the vehicle lurched forward and disappeared into the white. Jack didn't move for a long moment after the sound was gone. The mother dog slowly lowered herself to the floor, body collapsing around the puppies. Her sides heaved, breath coming in ragged pulls. Jack knelt beside her, resting a hand lightly against her shoulder, feeling the tension ease inch by inch. "It's not over," he murmured more to himself than to her. Outside, the storm continued to rage, sealing the house off from the world. Somewhere beyond the snow, the man who had abandoned them was still out there. And Jack knew with cold certainty that this night had only drawn the line. Dawn came thin and gray, the storm finally loosening its grip on the valley. Snow still fell, but softly now, as if exhausted. Jack sat at the small table, with the radio cradled in both hands, listening to the low hiss between channels. He had been awake all night, measuring time by the rise and fall of the mother dog's breathing and the small, restless movements of the puppies. When the voice crackled through at last, it sounded almost unreal. "Anyone reading this is County Dispatch." Jack answered immediately, giving his location, his name, the briefest version of the night that had just passed. He didn't embellish. He didn't soften anything. The words came out steady, practiced, as if he'd been waiting years to say them. "Stay where you are," the dispatcher said. "Units are on the way. Rescue 2. The mother dog lifted her head at the sound of the radio. She didn't growl this time. She watched Jack searching his face, and he found himself nodding to her as if she could understand the shape of what was coming. It took nearly an hour for them to arrive. First came the snowplow, slow and grinding, carving a path where there hadn't been one. Then a county truck lights muted in the daylight, followed by a rescue van marked with reflective tape and the outline of a paw print on the side. Jack stepped onto the porch as they pulled up, boots crunching over ice. Deputy Tom Alvarez climbed down first. In the clearer light, he looked older than Jack remembered, lines cut deeper around his eyes, dark stubble shadowing his jaw. His posture was careful, deliberate, as if he carried old injuries he didn't advertise. "You okay?" Tom asked. Jack nodded. "They're inside." Behind Tom came Sarah Whitcomb from Mountain Paw's rescue. She was in her early 40s, tall and lean, her blonde hair pulled into a low braid tucked beneath a knit cap. Her skin was wind-burned. Her eyes sharp but kind, the look of someone who had learned to assess damage quickly without flinching. She moved with quiet confidence, hands already pulling gloves tighter. Inside the house felt smaller with more people in it. The mother dog rose as they entered, positioning herself instinctively in front of the puppies. Sarah stopped several feet away and crouched, lowering her profile. "It's okay, girl," Sarah said softly. "We're not here to take them from you." The tone mattered more than the words. The dog's growl faded to a low vibration, her eyes never leaving Sarah's hands. Sarah took in the scene with practiced speed, the condition of the paws, the way the dog favored one side, the alertness despite exhaustion. "She's been through something," she said quietly to Jack, "but she's strong." Tom stepped back outside to make a call. Minutes later, another vehicle arrived. This one the same dark canvas jacket Jack remembered now dusted white with snow. The man from the porch was guided out, hands cuffed, his earlier confidence stripped away by daylight and witnesses. He avoided looking at the house. The charges came easily: abandonment, animal cruelty, endangerment during a declared storm emergency. The rope and tarp Jack had found were bagged, photographed, logged, evidence that wouldn't blow away this time. When it was done, the quiet felt different, earned. Sarah examined the puppies one by one, gentle and thorough. They were stronger now, bellies round, tiny hearts beating fast beneath her fingers. "They'll make it," she said. "All of them." The mother dog watched every touch tense, but no longer panicked. When Sarah finished, she sat back on her heels and met Jack's eyes. "We can take them to the clinic, warm them up properly, start the process." Jack looked down at the dog, at the way she leaned subtly into his leg, not for protection, but for balance. He felt the weight of the night settle into memory. "I know," he said. "Do what you need to do." Spring came late that year. By the time the snow finally retreated from the valley, the puppies were tumbling over one another in a fenced yard behind the rescue center, their coats bright and clean, their legs clumsy with confidence. Families came, good ones. People who knelt instead of reaching, who asked questions and listened to the answers. One by one, the puppies left. Jack attended each adoption, quietly standing back, hands in his pockets. He watched them go without regret. This was how it was supposed to work. The mother dog did not leave. She healed slowly, carefully. Her scars faded. The fear softened into caution, then into something like trust. When Sarah finally asked the question, she already knew the answer. "She's bonded to you," Sarah said. "If you want her." Jack looked at the dog, at the way she waited, without demanding present, without pressing. "I do." They drove back to the cabin together. The house changed after that. Not all at once. Small things first. A bowl by the door, a blanket that stayed on the floor instead of the couch. Footprints in the snow that returned each morning, paired now. The dog learned the rhythm of the place. She learned that the radio voices were not a threat, that engines could pass without stopping, that doors opened and closed without loss. Jack learned in turn the sound of her breathing when she slept deeply, the way she checked the perimeter before settling, the quiet certainty of her presence beside him. By the time winter returned, the house no longer felt empty. Each morning as light crept in over the mountains, Jack woke to the soft padding of paws on wood. In the coldest season, he could remember something had stayed. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes they arrive quietly on 4 frozen paws at the edge of a road in the middle of a storm. The Bible tells us that God watches over the least among us and that no act of compassion goes unseen. On that winter night, it wasn't strength or bravery that changed everything. It was a choice to open a door instead of turning away. In our daily lives, we all pass moments like that. Someone hurting, someone abandoned, someone cold in ways we can't always see. We may not be asked to face a blizzard, but we are asked again and again who we choose to be when it matters. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach the people who need them most. And wherever you are tonight, may God bless you, protect you, and remind you that even the smallest kindness can become a miracle in someone else's winter.